Welcome to the show, everybody. On today's episode, we're back on the 65 C10 Shortbed, and we're going to be working on the rear suspension. We're going to be installing a bunch of CPP parts, starting with the CPP C-notch, and then we're going to be installing the deluxe adjustable track bar, and then their 2-inch drop blocks. All these parts are completely bolt-in. They don't require any welding or anything like that, so it's something that you could do it in your garage. I was going to do a step notch on this truck, but I was thinking, let me try and do something quick and easy that everybody at home can follow along with. I actually did buy the welded step notch kit for this truck, but again, like I said, I changed course and figured I'll do something for the show that everybody could follow along with. I've basically installed everything that you've seen here on other C10s before, and I've always been happy with it. Everything always bolts in really easy. The hardest part about any of this installation, basically these items here go in flawlessly, easily. The hardest part is the C-notch, and basically it's they don't provide any sort of template, so you're going to have to cut and make a template, and I'll show you the template that I make for this, just out of any sort of cardboard or whatever. You'll trace and transfer that to the frame. They do actually use existing holes on the frame to index and line your template up, and then basically you will have to cut a notch in the frame for this to slide into and then bolt in. The other thing is you would have to remove the existing bump stop brackets there on the frame, and those are riveted on. And with the 60 to 66 C10s, removing rivets, and also the 67 through 72 C10s, both have pretty much same frames. Removing rivets are also kind of a pain in the butt. So that's the only difficulty factor that you'll experience with installing anything here. Like I said, the track bar and the drop blocks, it's pretty simple. Just some bolt and bolt on. This it just requires some cutting and then removing of the stock factory rivets, and then it's just a direct bolt on at that point. Also, if you haven't done so already, please remember to like and subscribe down below. It really helps us out a lot. Also, I'm sporting, and in previous episodes I haven't plugged it, but I am sporting some of our merchandise. I'll have the link below where you can get it. This is some of the merchandise. You know, we've done some of our luxury builds in the past, so this is from our Mercedes build. If any of you guys are into Mercedes, the numbers on this stand for like the E55 and E63, and it also has our logo in the back. You can get that on our website, or I'll have the link down below, but it's really easy to remember. It's basically merch.r9garage.com. Again, that's merch.r9garage.com. We have hoodies, sweatshirts, tees, stickers, pretty much everything on there. I'll have a link down below, and then anybody who comments down below, well, actually the first person who comments down below with your size, I will actually send you out a free t-shirt. So hurry up, get down in those comments, put your size up there, and I'll send you out a free t-shirt. Let's hurry up and get started on this build. This is going to be an interesting build. We'll get the rear end stance dialed in on this truck for a final, and you'll like the way it looks. Alright, let's get started. Alright, we got the truck in the garage, so let's get it jacked up, take the wheels off, drop the rear axle, start getting the U-bolts off, cut off the original rear bump stops, and start getting everything disassembled. At that point, we put on the drop blocks and the deluxe track bar. After that, then we'll tackle the C-notch. So let's get this jacked up. Since I'm going to be working on the rear axle and rear suspension, I put the jack stands underneath the frame. This way I'm able to drop the axle up and down, and the frame will stay static where it's at. They're riveted on. Normally if you're cutting a regular rivet, you can crisscross it with a cutoff wheel and then knock it off. These are kind of guarded because they have the bracket around it. So on these I usually just like center punching them and then drilling through them with a small drill bit, and then progressively getting larger and larger until you could just basically knock this whole bracket off. So we'll start with that. Removed. Next thing is I want to cut out the section for the C-notch. Like I mentioned before, the CPP does not provide a template, so you have to make your own template. Made it out of the snacks I was snacking on all day. So basically grab any piece of cardboard or construction paper. What you're going to want to do is place it up against the C-notch. Get your overall shape, and then what you're going to want to do is transfer that to the inside and make sure that the cutout is large enough for the C-notch to slide into your frame, and then transfer the holes then to your template. Because if you just base it on the outside alone, this cutout is actually smaller than this cutout. So you want to make sure that actually this fits in there, because the thickness here will make a difference. If you just cut it out based upon this ID, when you go to fit it, it won't fit. So make sure that it actually fits on the inside. And you can transfer it to here. CPP references the template off off of this mark basically right here. So you start it from here, place it on, and you can transfer it at that point. Make your mark, cut it, transfer your bolt holes. The other thing is these two front elongated holes line up with the two rivets down here on underneath where your factory spring used to go. Your factory spring used to bolt here, but there's a reinforcement plate that's riveted here. So two things. One, we have to remove these rivets because two bolts are going to go through here. But number two, that makes it foolproof, meaning that you're not going to put this in the wrong place. You're locating mark right here, so you know that it starts from here forward, and these elongated holes are going to bolt right through two other factory points. So they make it foolproof, so you don't have to worry where, exact placement. So what I like to do is basically trace my mark, make my cut, make sure it fits, and then also use the notch as a template to drill my holes. So basically I'll sit it on, once my cut is on, I'll sit it on and then bolt it to these two, have that hold it up, and then use the notch as a template to drill the remaining holes. This way the remaining holes are actually dead perfect on your frame, as opposed to using your template. You could use your template if you want, but this will help keep your drill bit true as you're drilling it. Let's get started on that. I'm going to actually cut these 4 rivets off, 2 on each side, grind them, cut them off, and then start marking and cut our notch. I like to do one side at a time, meaning that I'll cut this notch, bolt this side completely in, then I'll cut that side, bolt that side completely in. This way you never have both sides of the frame notched and not reinforced, so you prevent any sagging of your frame at all. So let's get started. Alright, so I got the rivets out from underneath here. Next thing you need to do is trim this excess lip of the reinforcement plate for the spring perch that overhangs the frame. This way the C-notch fits flush against the frame. So I'll use a cutoff wheel just to cut this off. Cutoff wheel, and I traced, I basically rested it against the frame to trace the profile of the frame. This way it has a nice clean cut and it follows the frame perfectly. Let's use our template, line it up, tape it on, make our marks, and start cutting out the frame for the C-notch. Alright, no going back now. So for his top two corners, you're going to want to use a drill bit and actually drill round circles, because you don't want a sharp edge. Sharp edges can cause stress cracks, so you want it to be a round corner. Basically all your corners you want to be round, and these are the only two corners there are. Everything else cuts off. So I'm going to use a drill bit, drill those two corners, and then everything else you could cut off with a cut-off wheel. If you have a plasma cutter, you could use a plasma cutter. Like I said, I was doing this episode just for basically anybody who wants to do this at home. They could do this at home. So pretty much everybody has a cut-off wheel, so we're going to do this with a cut-off wheel. The other thing is you want to cut on the outside of that line that we traced, again, so that that you do have enough room to slide that C-notch in when we go to fit it. If you cut on the line or inside the line, again, it might be too tight to fit that C-notch in, since we when we drew the template, it fit perfectly on the C-notch, and then you're tracing inside that line, so it might not fit. So cut outside the line. So let's start drilling. cut out and cleaned up. I went over it with the DA, cleaned up all the sharp edges. Even though the notch is going to cover it, you want it to be nice and everything. On the inside, if the bed's ever off or anybody's ever underneath it, you don't want them to cut themselves, or it's basically a quality of work. You want something to look nice from the inside too, or underneath. Basically gonna bolt up the notch using the 2 bolts, bolt holes, factory bolt holes that are under the spring reinforcement plate, and then I'm probably going to use a clamp to clamp it tight here, and then just use the notch itself as a template to drill the other holes. So let's get started on that. So that's another way that you know that you got your cut right. I was able to get this bolt just slid right into the factory hole. So that's another promising reinforcement that you got your notch cut right. Basically the lineup mark right here, and then the fact that those bolt holes line up perfectly. Alright, so at this point I'll use this as a template to mark and drill these holes. There's a couple holes underneath, and these ones are already bolted in this factory hole. So basically 2 here, 2 here, and 2 down here. And that is it. Cut out drills and everything. Clean this down with some Windex and spray it with chassis black just to touch everything up, and then we can bolt everything together. 5 or 10 minutes. This stuff dries pretty quick, and then bolt everything together. And then do the same thing to the other side, and then we could jump on to the U-bolts, the drop locks and the deluxe adjustable panhard bar. Alright, paint's dry already, so we could bolt on the C-notch and then get started on the other side. So everything's all tightened up. We could jump onto the other side, pretty much repeat the same process. I'm not going to bore you with that. I'm going to just do it, show you when it's done, and then we'll jump onto the drop locks and then the adjustable track bar. Alright, so I got both sides completed. You can see here, came out really nice. These C notches from CPP really fit the frames beautifully. Main thing is follow the guidelines, and that's basically that you use this basically hole in the frame to position the notch. Make a template like I showed you, and then I always use the notch itself to basically mark the holes and drill them after the fact at that point. But you can see it conforms to the frame, fits the frame really good, no gaps or anything like that, and it looks really good. They're sturdy. I've used them before, like I said. I've never had any issues with them if installed properly. I've always done them myself. Main thing is, don't overcut. You can see where I cut the frame, it basically meets the notch. It's not overcut. When I was doing this side, you seen I test fit it. I had to trim a little bit more, so it's always good to undercut and not overcut. You want it to fit the notch and not be basically butchered. You don't want to cut more than you need to. I've done them many times, so I'm experienced with this notch, but I really like it. Let's get on to installing the drop locks and then the deluxe adjustable track bar, and then we'll be done with the rear. Alright, welcome back. I got the U-bolts cut off yesterday. And basically, earlier today, I touched up parts of the lower trailing arms and the rear axle where the U-bolts and everything was covering. So right now, it's the easiest part of the whole install. Basically, installing the drop box and the deluxe track bar. So let's go ahead and get that started. And then also too, for the rear shock mounts, I'm going to show you a trick that I use on actually reusing the stock shock mounts. I know a lot of people will go out and purchase extended shock mounts or aftermarket shock mounts instead of using the stock shock mounts, which basically mount off the bottom trailing arm and over here. But I actually always reuse the stock shock mounts. I just flip them around, and then it allows you to line up the bottom factory shock mount with the frame perfectly, so that you can actually use the side post of the frame and a stud and run a shock in line with the frame. So I'll show you that as I do that. So let's get started. So basically you'll start with the U-bolt and then one of the blocks. When you're doing the track bar and the drop blocks, you have to install them at the same time. So basically start off with the U-bolt, slide that into the factory location. And then for the driver's side, there's a spacer that's going to go underneath the drop block, and that's part of the deluxe track bar setup. Take the axle a little bit. Get this on hook. I like to do one side at a time, because basically once you've removed the factory U-bolts and everything, your axle and your pinion angle and drive shaft is going to want to tilt forward, so it's really hard to do both. So I'll do one side, that basically prop my axle back up. We'll tighten these semi-tight, and then we'll go over and do the other side. So right now I'll pull you off the tripod. I'll show you what I mean about the lower shock mounts, and then I'll put you back up and we'll continue on. Alright, you can see here, these are the bottom two lower shock mounts. These are basically left and right as they came off the vehicle. They're normally pointed towards the inside of the vehicle, and they would connect basically right there and right there on the inside of the vehicle. So this shock mount right here would come straight up, and connect there. And this shock mount right here would come straight up and connect right there. The thing is, normally when you lower the vehicles extremely, or if you bag them, you usually can't find a shock that short, or it puts them in an awkward angle where they don't work. So what I normally do is I swap them side to side. So I put the driver's side on the passenger side, and I put the passenger side on the driver's side. Not only do I do that, I flip it. So instead of just bringing it over, I rotate it where it's going to sit facing the back now. Same thing like this. Bring this over, flip it where it's going to face the back. And that will line up perfectly with your frame, with the outside of your frame. So you come out a shock in line with the outside of your frame. It's tucked up tight, so it will clear the inside of a tire. And usually you could get a shock to go straight up and down, and not at an angle. So it works really good like this. So let me get this bolted on, and we can go from there. Side in, so let's get the other side in. So this side goes together pretty much the same way as the other side. The only thing is, instead of the bottom spacer, you're actually using the actual bracket for the deluxe track bar system, and that's what that spacer's for. Since this actually takes up space between the drop lock and the actual arm, they give you a spacer on the other side, which is equal thickness as this bracket, so that you don't have any difference in height from driver's side to passenger side. So that's why they have the spacer on the other side. So we can start assembling the passenger side right now. are all bolted in, and U-bolts, and then the bottom bracket for the deluxe track bar kit. I hit everything with the impact. Just remember, you do have to go back in and torque these by hand. The torque specs come with these from CPP, so follow those directions. Don't forget that. Now we can actually go ahead and install the track bar. I cut two 4x4 blocks, which I'm just going to toss in on top of the axles. So when you install the track bar, the whole purpose of the track bar is to keep your axle centered at pretty much at ride height. It's not like a wishbone. It's not like a four link where your axle is always going to be centered. Your axle is going to shift from left to right depending on height, but basically at ride height you want to set up the track bar where your axle is dead center. So I'm gonna use these as my ride height. So 4x4s are roughly 3.5 inches. So I figure a good ride height for me is a 3.5 inch gap between the axle hitting the frame. I'm gonna have air ride on this, so you know, if I'm ever tapping the frame, you know, I could always inch it up or whatever, but I doubt I'll ever be tapping the frame. So the way I'm gonna adjust my track bar is basically with a 3.5 inch gap between axle to frame, and then basically you'll measure a reference point, but the best thing is from the backing plate of the drums or the axle to the frame, and make sure you have an equal space on both sides. So at this point we could jack up the axle till both sides touch the frame, and then put the track bar in, or we could put it in before or after, and then basically adjust the track bar until your axle is dead centered. Then this way you know it's fully adjusted at that point. So let's get started on that. So we have the axle jacked up all the way, truck's off of the jack stands, so we can measure each side. So the axle has to shift to the driver's side. So I'll drop it down, take some weight off of it to allow it to allow the track bar to spin a little easier. Try it again. And then since these frame rails are not straight, like some vehicles, you know, they cock in, make sure that you're using the same reference point on each side, otherwise your measurement's not going to be square. Not bad. It needs to come back this way, like I think an 8. Between an 1/8 and a quarter. It's very close. There, that's good. So you can lock those in place and be done with it. All right, we can slap our wheels on, put the truck on the ground, and we're done. Once over on the final installation. Again, all these CPP products are easy bolt-in. I've used them many times on other 60 to 66 builds and also 67 to 72 builds. Basically, frames are pretty much the same. Everything's quick, easy bolt-in. The hardest part is the notch itself, just because you have to drill out some rivets, drill some holes, and cut the frame. And you do have to be careful when you cut the frame as to not overcut. So other than that, everything else is a straightforward bolt-on. You've seen how quick the drop locks and the track bar went in. Again, all the products fit perfect. No rubbing, no modifications needed, no grinding. Track bar fits beautifully, clears the axle. I am going to remove the original bolt right here for the stock track bar. It doesn't interfere, you don't have to remove it, but to me it's not needed, so just it looks nice to get rid of it. So again, this is pretty much set up right now as my current ride height. I will show you how I mount the shocks once I do the airbags. I'm going to be doing that in a future episode. So I do mount the airbags off of the factory front or factory rear location for off the lower control arms, and then I'll show you basically how I mount those and everything. I do need to do the front or the middle cross member where the axle goes through and the lower control arms mount to. The way it's set up currently, if I lower it all the way, the axle will hit, or the drive shaft will hit the cross member, and if it's laid out all the way, the cross member itself, how it dips down, will hit the pavement. I've done it in the past where I basically cut and the bottom half and flatten it, and then notch the top half. But you do have to cut a lot out of it, and it's pretty much just as much work as to pull that out and put a new one in. So I'm going to be putting a Performance Online POL cross member in future episodes. So that'll probably be my next episode on this truck, and then also to the rear bags, just to finish up the rear suspension and get the bed back on this truck. So that's the only reason I haven't pulled out the rear blocks, because the rear drive shaft will hit that tunnel. Other than that, that pretty much concludes this episode. Let me see if there's anything else I wanted to give you a close-up on so you can see. But again, all the CPP products, again, to me, fit pretty nice. So stay tuned for our next episode on this. As I mentioned, we're going to be doing the center cross member on this from Performance Online. We'll be doing the rear airbags, and then I'll show you how I actually reuse these stock rear shock mounts. I come off of them and basically install the shocks to the frame. Again, if you haven't done so already, please like and subscribe down below. It really helps us out a lot. Thanks again for viewing. I really appreciate all my viewers, and stay tuned for some interesting content. Thanks.